week 16 of my WGU accounting degree, and update for two classes. So, the one that I finished was Intermediate Accounting 3, D105. And then actually the second one also finished is Accounting Information Systems, D217. So today's a little different than the recording on Monday afternoon instead of my usual Sunday. And that's just because yesterday there was just a lot going on. And so I decided to just record today after I took my Accounting Information Systems course. But to recap, Intermediate Accounting 3, I took the test last Monday. And to study for that course, what I did is I watched the review videos specifically for leases because that was a topic I just had a really hard time understanding and getting. And that I was just really weak in that section on the practice test. And so the review videos were, I would say they're pretty helpful. And they're also practice questions. If you go to the resources tab, they have there's a doc with all the resources in there. And then that doc has all the links to the other resources. And so I use that to do practice questions on all the sections I was really weak in on the practice test. And I also reread the module summary before I took the test too. And those are really helpful because each module in the textbook, it would just summarize everything you're supposed to know. And those are the objectives that the test covers. And so just reading through the summaries was really, really helpful. Right. So how was the test? So the first test, because remember intermediate accounting, they each have two exams. So the first one for IA3, I would say the Excel version, it was an Excel test. And so the Excel questions were really, really similar to the practice, very, very similar. So make sure you know that you know how to do it. And then I do feel like the actual questions, just the multiple choice, they emphasize different topics than the practice. At least the version I got. I still would say they were really similar though. And then the second test, that one was all multiple choice. I would say again, the actual exam was very similar to the practice. But again, I feel like I got different concepts emphasized on the actual test than what was on the practice, but still really, really similar. And remember I said to study, I did all those practice problems from the resource doc. Those were really helpful for the questions about leases. So I would definitely recommend taking a look at those. All right, so that's intermediate accounting 3. And then this past week, so Tuesday, I started reading for accounting information systems. I wasn't sure if it was going to be as textbook heavy as the previous courses, but I decided to just stick to the same schedule. And if it turned out it wasn't as much work, then I just had more free time on the weekend. So I started reading Tuesday for accounting information systems. I read a little bit every day, and then I finished reading on Saturday. And it wasn't as heavy, but it was a lot. So I finished reading on Saturday, and then Sunday I took the practice test. And let me scroll down to my notes. So for this course, when I logged in to the WGU course page, and I didn't know where to start. There's no obvious start place. Like if you click on the course material, it just opens up the textbook, but there was no direction there. So it wasn't like the other accounting courses where the textbook walks you through what to do. Um, so what I ended up doing was I went to the resources in WGU Connect, and I saw the study guide there that you're supposed to follow. And so I just, um, and then finally when I went back to the textbook, it there's a full textbook, but then there is what pops up on the left side is all the collection and units, and that's what you're supposed to read through. And so I guess they picked and choose the order to present it in and which pieces of the textbook, because if you go to the full textbook and try to read from there, there's actually more in there than what was chosen in that curated version of the textbook. I don't know if that makes sense, but I was confused when I first got into here. So if you're confused too, yeah, you're not the only person. All right. So also the instructor sent out a welcome email, and that one also has info on how to approach the course. I saw it after I'd figured out what to do, but it was just a good verification that I was on the right track. And so for this course, I did the quizzes and the tests in the textbook, just like I do for the other accounting courses, and those were really helpful. And I saw on Reddit people say this course is really hard or really dry, and I'm probably just a big fat nerd because I don't think it was dry or boring. And I, yeah, yeah. I'm a nerd because it talked about, like, databases, encrypting messages, um, and I took, like I've taken, programming courses before and learned how to, like, set up the database and use SQL. It's still fun. I wouldn't say I could do it now, but I could probably relearn it pretty quickly. But so that helped me a lot with this course. And then I also have worked with databases outside the programming course because I use Notion to store information for my business and just personal tasks. And so I set it up basically like a database and learned through trial and error what works and, like, the importance of having primary keys and normalizing your databases. So that experience really helped too with this textbook and understanding what they were talking about. Um, Especially when I got to the test, the practice test. So the practice test, even the quizzes, and the final test, which I took today, Monday, those are all hard, not because of the concepts are hard necessarily, but because of the wording, like the way they asked the question, the way they worded the answers, that was just really hard. And it's when I looked into Reddit to see what other people said about this course, they all said the same thing. Like, just the wording is just like the worst testing, like the worst test wording. So just be warned. So what I did to first, what I did to review for this test. So when I took the quizzes, I read through the whole quiz, like the whole practice test. Even when I got right, and you don't do that, but for this one, because of how weird the wording is, I had to read through all the questions and the right answers just to make sure I knew it for the actual test. And then there are some videos for this course. Like, there's, like, the module videos, so those are shorter, and then there's the cohort videos, like 3 of them, I think, and those are a lot longer. So I watched, like, a couple of the cohort ones, but I didn't really pay attention to the second one that much. Mainly just the first one for auditing, and I did the worst on that on the practice quiz. And then the shorter module videos, I watched a few of those, again, for auditing, because that was the section I was weakest on, and I would say that was pretty helpful. It was short, it was interesting. And in the cohort, that was helpful because they did have extra questions, and they went over different situations and gave more examples, so, like, more context, so that was really nice. There's also a list. They have the PowerPoint slides available, and so I scrolled through about half of them. Again, I started on the auditing part, which is where I was weakest, and then kind of worked my way backwards because the auditing's for the end. And I would say those are pretty helpful again for getting context, but sometimes they had more info than you needed to know, like more than what was even in the textbook. So good for extra info, extra context. But I'm not sure if they gave me more helpful info for the test. And then I checked Reddit for tips for the final test, and a lot of people were saying that there were more database questions. I I actually don't know. I was going to verify that, but I don't know because of how weirdly worded the questions were. Like, I don't know if I would say there were more about databases in the practice, but there are definitely words about databases. I'm just really glad I'm done with that test. While I was taking it, I was really nervous that I was getting a lot of questions wrong just because of how strangely worded it was. And I was just hoping I got it right so I never had to see this. When I could pass and never see the test again. And when I checked my result, I passed with, like, complimentary and exemplary fractions. So I did better than I did on the practice, like, way better than I expected to do. So, yeah, it's just a weird test. So my strategy to get through this was really relying on my whiteboard. I would write down, like, number 1, 2, 3, 4 to represent each answer choice, and then I would read through the choices. I just put a little X next to the obviously wrong answer choices, and then kind of, I don't know, I had to go with my gut feeling, like which of the other two options were right. And then at the end, I actually went back and reviewed all my questions. I usually don't do that. Is usually your first one is right, but in this case, because of the strange wording of the question, I went back through and just sort of just like glanced over, and there was a few I actually did change, and I don't because of how they give you the result, I'm not even sure if I changed it to the right answer, from the right answer, I can't tell you. But yeah, so that's how that went. Glad it's done. And then I emailed my mentor to open up my next classes. And so while I wait for that, I'm just gonna take a break today, and then tomorrow I will go and get started with the next classes. So yeah, we're almost done. But yeah, thanks for calling.